Western Australian government's $11 billion plan to sell off Western Power. Western Australia's power utility will be sold off under a plan which Premier Colin Barnett says he is confident will raise at least $11 billion to repair the state's beleaguered finances. Hundreds of people protested against the Washington government's plan to privatize utility Western Power. If the Liberal national government is re-elected, it has trailed Labor in recent polls. It will sell 51% of the Western Power poles and wires utility business, keeping the rest in state hands. The divisive issue is shaping as one of the most important of the March state election, given the Labor opposition has guaranteed it will not sell the electricity transmission and distribution company. Washington Labor leader Mark McGowan said the privatization would be a disaster. "They have wrecked the state's finances, they have delivered us the highest unemployment in the nation, and now they plan to flog off the family silver," he commented. But Premier Barnett said the $11 billion budget boost was only a conservative estimate of how much could be raised. Western Power would be floated on the share market, with 31% offered to Australian industry superannuation funds and 20% to mum-and-dad retail investors. The $11 billion figure implies Western Power is worth at least $21 billion to $22 billion, well above past valuations such as a PwC report last month estimating a $12 billion to $16 million total value. Mr. Barnett and Treasurer Mike Nahan said their higher price was based on the prices paid for similar assets such as the Usgrid and Transgrid NSW sales and their discussions with the banks involved. "It is going to be a significant amount of money. The $11 billion estimate is probably fair, it is a conservative estimate," Mr. Barnett told reporters. Superannuation funds were queuing up to buy these assets, Mr. Nahan said, given utilities were considered defensive reliable investments. The majority of the money, $8 billion, will be used to wipe out Western Power's debt, making a decent dent in current government debt of $28 billion that is forecast to grow to $40 billion. However, there was a risk for the Washington government in using proceeds from asset sales to pay down debt, as it had been unpopular with voters in Queensland, RBC capital markets strategist Michael Turner said in a note to clients. Of the other $3 billion, $1 billion would be spent on aging schools, $1 billion on public transport and other transport infrastructure, and $150 million on improving electricity supplies in more remote areas, which helped secure Washington Nationals leader Brendan Grill's support. The level of borrowings was getting uncomfortably high. "This makes our finances manageable," Mr. Barnett said, arguing that was debt had only soared because its share of national GST revenue had fallen so low. Labor leader Mark McGowan said selling Western Power would push up prices, drive down services, lose revenue and jobs. Mr. Grills and Mr. Barnett are financial and economic cowboys. "They have wrecked the state's finances, they have delivered us the highest unemployment in the nation, and now they plan to flog off the family silver." However, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Washington welcomed the plan, saying it would create thousands of jobs and drive economic growth. They said it would boost business confidence and enable the state government to create jobs by investing in new infrastructure. Mr. Barnett said there was no downside for West Australians because money would now be freed up for infrastructure for a growing population. The prices Western Power charges, which he said represented 40% of residents' power bills, would not rise sharply because that, along with maintenance, safety, and investment issues, were all still highly regulated. There would also be no forced redundancies at Western Power, Dr. Nahan said. Notre Dame University adjunct professor of politics Peter Kennedy said the issue would be crucial to the election result, with Mr. Barnett banking on the past successful floats in Washington of Bankwest and Olinta.